Hi there everybody and welcome to another Versus episode on my channel. Today we are going to be pinning another two titans that have just been warring against each other for decades. We are going to be analyzing both Coca-Cola and Pepsi Cola at the same time and see which one's fundamentals are better for us to invest in today. So with that said, let's get started with this Versus. Starting off, we got Coca-Cola on the left, Pepsi on the right. Market cap of Coca-Cola $265 billion to Pepsi $242.8 billion. PE for Coca-Cola at 30.2, PE of Pepsi 29.96. Right now, as it stands, just based on this PE, Coca-Cola is slightly more expensive than that of Pepsi in regards to the price to earnings. Share price of Coca-Cola $61.39, whereas Pepsi is $175.64. They both pay a very good annual dividends per share. Coca-Cola at $1.68, Pepsi $4.30. So off of this metric, if you're looking for a dividend perspective, right now Pepsi is significantly better. The amount of dividend being paid annually per share for Coca-Cola ends up being around $7.3 billion to Pepsi being around $6 billion. In regards to the free cash flow, Coca-Cola is definitely losing this one at a negative $259 million in affordability, meaning that their payout ratio is above 100%, meaning that they are 100% taking out debt for this dividend or issuing shares. All in all, Coca-Cola cannot afford this dividend, whereas Pepsi, even though they only have $578 million left in their free cash flow, they're still significantly below their threshold to afford this dividend. Even though they are really tight on this, they are still barely able to afford it. Next, we got the fundamentals. Net income. Coca-Cola 5 years ago, $6.5 billion to $7.7 billion. That is an increase, guys, of 19%. Pepsi, on the other hand, 5 years ago of $6.3 billion to $7.1 billion, which is an increase of 12%. When it comes to raw numbers, this is an obvious tie, seeing that their numbers are pretty much the same. However, just based on increases alone, Coca-Cola actually takes this metric. Next, we got the cash flow. Coca-Cola 5 years ago of $6.5 billion to 1 year ago of $8.7 billion, which is an increase of 33% for an average 5-year free cash flow of $7 billion. Pepsi, on the other hand, we got a really big negative here. 5 years ago, $7.6 billion to 1 year ago of $6.4 billion, which is a decrease, guys, of 16% with an average 5-year free cash flow of $6.5 billion. Just on this metric, they both have a similar 5-year free cash flow. However, gonna have to give this one to Coca-Cola because of the fact that they are positive, unlike Pepsi that they are actually negative. Next, we got the revenue. Coca-Cola $41.8 billion to 1 year ago of $33 billion. Guys, that is a decrease of 21.14%. On the other hand, unlike the free cash flow, Pepsi is actually doing very good when it comes to their revenue. 5 years ago of $62.8 billion to 1 year ago of $70.4 billion, which is an increase of 12.06%. This metric 100% goes to Pepsi. Next, we got the total debt. Coca-Cola 5 years ago, $45.8 billion in debt to $41.7 billion. That is a decrease, guys, of 3%. Not a big decrease, but a decrease nonetheless. Pepsi, on the other hand, has pretty much been all over the place. 5 years ago of $36.9 billion in debt to $41.3 billion in debt, which is an increase of 24%. In this metric, gotta give this one to Coca-Cola, mainly because of the fact that, well, they are decreasing their debt, unlike Pepsi, which are increasing it. Next, we got the shares outstanding. Coca-Cola 5 years ago of 4.26 billion shares to 4.31 billion shares. That is an increase of 0.72%. Pepsi, on the other hand, is actually doing the correct thing and actually decreasing their shares. 5 years ago of 1.4 billion to today of 1.38 billion, which is a decrease of 3.21%. Even though Coca-Cola in this case is increasing their shares, even though it's not by a huge amount, gonna have to give this one to Pepsi, mainly because of the fact that Pepsi is decreasing their shares, this is exactly what we want to see in a company. And lastly, we got the cash and equivalents. As of today, Coca-Cola has $11 billion in cash and equivalents with an average of $8 billion, and Pepsi has only $6.5 billion in cash and equivalents with an average of $8.1 billion. Pretty much the same average cash and equivalents, however, this metric 100% goes to Coca-Cola mainly because of the fact that they just have more cash on hand. Now we're going to make a low, medium, and high assumption for both, keeping the growth assumptions the same across both companies and keeping the required rate of return the same at around 10%, just so that way we get a correct analysis on this. For Coca-Cola's low assumption, I'm going to assume 3% growth, which ends up being a target share price, not adjusting for debt, of $29.88. For the median assumption, growth of 5% comes out to be $32.04, and for the high assumption, I'm going to assume a growth of 7%. This comes out to be $34.31. For Pepsi's low assumption, however, we get $78.72. For the median assumption, we get $84.40, and for the high assumption, we get $90.39. Adjusting for debt for Coca-Cola, we get a target share price of $23.67. For the low assumption, for the median assumption, we get $25.82, and for the high assumption, we get $28.10. For Pepsi, doing the same, we get a target share price adjusting for debt of $53.82 for the low assumption, $59.50 for the median assumption, and $65.49 for the high assumption. As it currently stands, Coca-Cola's target share prices are significantly closer to that of the current share price than that of Pepsi. So all in all, for the cash equivalents, Coca-Cola 100% takes it, seeing the fact that they have more cash on hand. For the shares outstanding, Pepsi takes it mainly because of the fact that they are actually decreasing their shares, whereas Coca-Cola, even though they are increasing it a little bit, it is still an increase nonetheless. For the total debt, Coca-Cola actually takes this one mainly because of the fact that they are decreasing it by around 30%, whereas Pepsi has actually increased it by around 24%. For the revenue, Pepsi takes this one, actually increasing it 12%, whereas Coca-Cola is actually losing revenue year over year. For the cash flow, this one actually goes to Coca-Cola. Even though they do have a similar 5-year free cash flow, Coca-Cola is actually increasing it by 33% since 5 years ago, while Pepsi has actually gone down 16%. And lastly, when it comes to income, we have to give this one 100% to Coca-Cola, mainly because of the fact that they are increasing it by 19%, whereas Pepsi is only increasing it by 12%. For these metrics, we get a total score of 4 for Coca-Cola and 2 for Pepsi. So just based on these metrics, we got more positives when it comes to Coca-Cola than that of Pepsi. Now, when it comes to the dividend, Coca-Cola 100% cannot afford this dividend, guys. They are over 100% in paying their dividends, meaning that this is probably where the increase in shares outstanding is going to, is to paying off this dividend. Pepsi, on the other hand, is barely making the payment for this dividend at 91.13% payout ratio, but in this scenario, even though that is close, Pepsi 100% takes it because of the fact that their payout ratio is under 100%, and also the fact that their dividend is $4.30, whereas Coca-Cola's is only $1.68. So in this case, I'm going to have to give this one a tie. Right now, these two companies are pretty much tied in almost every aspect. Coca-Cola has better fundamentals than that of Pepsi. However, when it comes to a dividend, Pepsi is significantly better off than Coca-Cola, so it pretty much evens it out. But that pretty much does it for this episode of the Stock Versus series. Liked if you like, comment, subscribe. It really does help her with the algorithm on YouTube. You can follow me on my new tech sites at BitChute, Odyssey, and Rumble. In addition to my stock analysis videos and crypto videos, you will find exclusives as well. So with that said, peace out and be on the lookout for the next Stock Versus video.